Okay, all right. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us at the new time of 1:30 UAE instead of 1 o'clock. So thank you for jumping on. As usual, it's Thursday, it's Property Thursday, and a special guest this week, as well as Darren, who's always on, is Johnny from Seven. Seven and Holborn go back a long way, and probably one of our most successful partners. So great to have Johnny on, and we're going to be, I'm sure we'll stray a bit and talk about other things, but really we are going to be talking about Bracknell and what Johnny's got in Bracknell and why Bracknell. And at the end of it, there will be all about the layout of how people can pay and what to pay and what the purchase prices are going to be. But of course, a little bit of an overview about Seven, which is always important. So Johnny, over to you.
Great, thanks a lot, Chris. You can hear me, yeah? Thumbs up?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris, and yeah, welcome everybody. Great to be asked to come on here on Property Thursdays at the home of football. As Chris said, what I'm gonna do is start with as it says on the screen, an overview about SevenCapital for those of you that don't know who we are. Obviously, it's important when you're ever looking to invest into real estate that you know who you're dealing with, and especially in uncertain times like we find ourselves in now, it's important that you're with a trusted partner, and so having that prior knowledge and knowledge of a company's history is really important. So what I'm going to start with is a bit of a more generic overview of SevenCapital as a group. So the first thing to point out is SevenCapital are a developer. So we're not an agency. We don't work on behalf of anybody else. We don't underwrite. We not only buy the land, but we actually build everything ourselves as well. So on your screen here, you'll see Holborn Construction. Now, Holborn Construction are SevenCapital's own construction company. We created them 12 years ago. And the thought process behind that was, let's maintain the quality and build a brand around the quality of our property. And the only way that we felt we could consistently do that was using the same construction company that knew our values and knew our standards. So Holborn have sort of grown beyond just the SevenCapital residential side. And they now build retail parks, industrial parks, commercial entities. They've been part of regenerations of entire towns, shopping centers. So they're a huge part of our business. And in 2019, we're actually the 5th most contracted construction company in all of the UK. So that obviously gives you an idea of scale. They're a massive part of the business, 2,000 staff and fully owned by SevenCapital. So that's quite niche within the industry for a developer to own its own construction company. But as I say, it gives us a sort of added incentive or an added advantage.
And
so
I think Johnny, just to say that the fact that you're from A to Z, as it were, and with what's been going on with COVID, then you have full control and you know exactly what's going on each of your sites and where you stand. And obviously with Darren on board, that's really important from the mortgage point of view as well. So it is worth noting that, you are the entity, you are everything on this one.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll come on to the sort of full process later, but you're absolutely right, Chris. Obviously, from the moment we buy the land, we then have full control. And that is something that, as you say, in this day and age is quite important. So that's Holborn. The top 3 are pretty self-explanatory: media company, homes division, events company, all based out of our office in London, in Mayfair. We've got a big office there on Park Lane, where a lot of these companies are based. Retail, industrial, as I mentioned, the sort of warehouses you see on the side of the M25 for Amazon and DHL, we build those, or Holborn build those. And then on the bottom row, for those of you, well, I suppose there's 40 of them around the world. So depending on where you are, you might recognize the logo of the Park Regis. They're in Singapore, Bali, the UAE, the UK, obviously, India, Australia. We own all of those as a group. So there's about 40 of them, as I say. And they're all under SevenCapital, as well as the hospitality group that runs them, which is the Staywell Group. So that's actually the only part of our business that is international. And what I mean by that is that it's the only part of the business where we have assets that are overseas. Everything else is purely UK based. As well, bottom left, Synergy Bank. Now that was previously the Bank of Cyprus. SevenCapital acquired the Bank of Cyprus 3 years ago. We bought it with a loan book value of just over $1 billion. It now sits at just under $3 billion. So it's been a great success story. and it adds another arm to the SevenCapital group into another industry. So the whole group is worth just over $6 billion. And look, as I said, that's really important. When you know that who you're dealing with has a track record, that they have some weight behind them, and backing, that's crucial, especially if you're looking at off-plan residential property, because as secure as the UK market is, and a point we always make, the UK is the most invested market in the world. For foreign investment, it's number one, more than the US, more than Germany, more than anywhere. However, to think that that means you don't have horror stories would be incorrect. And I think we've heard quite a lot over the last sort of 12 months with developers that perhaps don't have the funding prior to building, or any number of things that could have gone wrong have gone wrong. And that's why now more than ever, you want to make sure that you're dealing with a big developer with a proven track record. And that's exactly what SevenCapital are. We're the market leaders at our level. What I mean by our level is our price point. Everything that we build sits below the £500,000 mark. So our average price is around say now probably about 300,000. And as I say, at that level, we're the market leader. So to come on to that, we built £2.1 billion worth of property, 7.8 million square feet, over 6,500 units that are already complete. So quite a good track record over the last 12 years of building developments around the UK. Now, another £639 million is under construction, so that will add to the grand total. And these names obviously won't mean a lot to anybody on this webinar, but I'll go into the fact that we choose specific locations based on the investment perspective that we deem suitable. So these are all dotted in various parts around the UK. To come on to the actual process of buying, like for any of you that are on this webinar that have bought a property before, anyone that tells you that buying a property is a walk in the park is lying, because we all know that it's not. Whether it's down to the legal side, the mortgages, the tax implications, whatever it might be, it can be complicated. I bought my first property 2 years ago, which just handed over this year. And having sold property for a while, it was quite interesting actually going through the process, especially as an overseas investor, and understanding everything from, the first-hand view. So that's one thing that we do incredibly well as a business, is holding our client's hand through the process. And the way that we do it is through this turnkey developer approach, which is, in my opinion, a bit of an overused term, because every company seems to say that they do it. But it's something that SevenCapital have put a huge amount of commitment into financially. And we have an office in the UK that purely deals with the A to Z of buying a property. So as an example, we have teams within our UK office that deal with the legal side, so they liaise with the lawyers. We have a team that deals with the mortgage brokers, so they liaise with the mortgage brokers. From the letting side, we have a team that deals with all the different panel of letting agents that we have. So you're constantly dealing with the people that are actually building the property, and they're holding your hand through it via our partners, which again is really rare within the industry. You'll see on the bottom of your screen, we've won a lot of awards off the back of that, and even more, conclusive, which isn't sadly on here, but you can Google it. We're the highest rated property developer in the whole of the UK on Trustpilot. It's 4.9 with hundreds of reviews. So, Trustpilot's a fairly well-respected review system, and it's off the back of the service that we provide and the effort we put into it. So, as I say, you're never going to have a completely smooth process, unfortunately, but you can sort of make it as manageable as possible. And as I said, we do this through partnerships. So, as most businesses would do, they would use it as a revenue stream. We actually do the opposite. So we leverage economies of scale. The fact that we hand over hundreds of units and give them to solicitors, in return, the solicitors give our clients a cheaper rate. From a lettings perspective, because we give Savills, Martin & Co, Countrywide, all the agents on our panel, because we give them a lot of business, they all are required to have an 8% full management fee on our panel, which is, for those of you that know the UK market, very low. I think Foxtons are 15 to 18% in central London, which is mad. So
is that different, Johnny, from different parts of the world, or is that across? Because I mean, I know you're looking the Midlands and up north at the moment. We're talking about down south, but is that across your network?
Everywhere. So everywhere that we have built and we are building, it's strictly 8%. It used to be 6 actually, but sadly they apparently weren't making enough, so it went up to 8, which I think is still pretty reasonable. So it's not only the price element of it. You know, it's all very well having a low management fee. If your property's empty, who cares, because you're not paying anything anyway. We know the emphasis of having a tenant in your property. It's something our CEO calls the cornerstone of property investment. If you don't have a tenant, the whole thing falls apart, particularly if you're taking a mortgage and you're wanting it to sort of wipe its face. So that process of creating showrooms in our developments 3 months before completion, we get all of the agents in there straight away, so that by the time the property is complete, you've got someone living in there. From my own personal experience, having bought in a site of ours just outside Oxford, 2 days after I completed on my property, my tenant moved in, and I used one of our panel agents. So it works really well. And as I say, it's really imperative that to the performance of your investment that you have a tenant in there, which is why we help. So this element is really important, because as you'll see on the screen, and I'm sure we've got people from all over the world online today. We have offices in Dubai, in Hong Kong, Singapore, South Africa. Obviously, head offices, we have 3 in the UK, 1 in London and 2 in Birmingham. So we have to facilitate that foreign investment from people that are living overseas, where the process is slightly different from every angle. We handle that. And it's important you have the security to know that we do this every day. So you're not alone, and you're not the first person to do it. So we know the process and how it works best. So that's an overview of us as a business. As Chris mentioned, what I'm going to talk to you today about is a project of ours, which is our latest project, which is in a place called Bracknell. Just quickly before I go through it, to mention, obviously, SevenCapital are a developer, but we're also an investment-minded developer. So everywhere that we build is with the mindset of, how is this asset going to perform over a 5, 10, 15-year period? How easily is it going to rent? What rental yield are we going to get? And that's really the skill as an acquisition team for a developer like us. It's not just about choosing the obvious places. It's about choosing up and coming places, but buying ourselves at the right price, that obviously as a business, we make our return, but that our clients are making their return. That's the only way that we get longevity. Yep, Chris?
And then one point I was going to make, bringing Darren in, because the questions come in, but you obviously talk about the due diligence that you guys go through, and how you pick your sites and go through. And obviously at Holborn, we do our own due diligence. And I know that Andy Foote always says, it's actual fact, it's getting it rented out sooner rather than later, which is the most important thing for the client. And of course, bringing Darren in at this point, the mortgages. How early would you get to see one of these, Darren, and cast your eye over it and speak to the building societies and banks to give reassurance to our clients?
So we try and do the due diligence soon as the developer knows they're actually going to start developing. So I've already spoken to Karen, our business support. So she's going to basically contact Johnny straight afterwards, so we can actually start looking at presenting the development to the lenders initially. So we try and do that initially, just to make sure that lenders are happy with the value of the properties, the areas, that type of stuff. So we do that with every single development, but straight away. And
of course, what comes into that is demand for letting and management, at the end, to make sure that those figures all stack up. And as Johnny said earlier, and so it washes its face.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as I say, everything through our history has always been that with that mindset. Is it going to rent quickly? How's it going to perform over the coming year? And look, don't get me wrong, no one has a crystal ball, and if they did, we probably wouldn't be wearing face masks every day. But it's you can make projections based on the fundamentals, your supply and demand imbalances, your transport links changing, commercial activity, commercial commitment. And these are the areas that we choose. But as I say, buying at the right price ourselves. So Bracknell is one of those locations that we've chosen. We've actually built twice there, or we're building twice there. And for those of you that don't know where Bracknell is, I think the obvious reference points here are, obviously Heathrow is 20 minutes to the east, so it's not a far drive from Heathrow. Ascot, for those of you that know or are fans of horse racing, which is actually on at the moment, it's literally 5 minutes from Ascot. Any tips are welcome for all of those of you that are horse racing fans. But you're 5 minutes from Ascot, you're 20 minutes to Windsor. So it's in a really nice part of the UK. It's a nice countryside, sort of higher end of the demographic, and a kind of, a really affluent area. But for those of you that do know Bracknell was certainly did not have that image. It was kind of left behind as a town. There was no exposure. There was no commercial commitment. There was not any investment sort of in terms of the infrastructure of the town. 120,000 people, and yeah, slightly left behind. Reading, which as you can see is to the west, it benefited many years ago now from commercial commitment, from transport links, from universities, and that kind of shot off, and Bracknell was left behind. So what's happened more recently, it's reiterating the times, sorry, one thing to mention, it's a 50-minute train direct into Paddington, into London Paddington. So what's happened more recently is these companies that are just a few of them that you see on your screen, which all of you will recognize, your General Electric, 3M, HP, Microsoft, Fujitsu, some of the biggest blue chip companies in the world have chosen Bracknell as their headquarters. So this is huge commercial commitment. We're talking thousands and thousands of jobs that are there today, right in Bracknell town centre and beyond, that are accommodating, as you'll see on the screen, 50% of the working population in Bracknell are management or director roles. So they're accommodating these head offices, which obviously entails the higher end of the positions within that company, which obviously entails higher salaries, which demands better property, high quality property, which does not exist at all in Bracknell today. The closest place that you would go is either further to London or Reading. There's some nicer new build developments, but in Bracknell itself, nothing. So this.
I'm actually from Fleet, Johnny. So I'm 17 minutes from Bracknell, and yes, I know it very, very well. The other nice thing, I mean, I know you, so it's near Heathrow and London and Ascot, etc., but going the other way as well. We often get asked about places like Bristol and Bath, and down the M4, you're only probably an hour or less from going to those sort of central locations as well. And if you want, you can go all the way to Wales.
Yeah, it's a good point. You're right on the M4, as I think, sorry, it shows on here. M4 is literally just, as you see, to the north of Bracknell. So you're really well connected from a motorway system as well to all over the UK, really. So yeah, good point. That's the local knowledge for you, Chris.
Welcome.
So
we are coming from the home of football today. So
well, exactly, yeah.
Welcome, just down the road in Wembley.
So on top of these world-class employers, I mean, this is where the exposure started coming to Bracknell. That obviously there's a lot of space, there's cheaper land because there was nothing there. So these companies, as we know, when one company within an industry chooses a location, they tend to all flock. And that's exactly what's happened in Bracknell. There are these huge Americanized business parks with all of these tech companies there. Now, Bracknell, which I'm sure many of you may not have even heard of, was so much so at the beginning of last year in the House of Commons, Boris Johnson, our fearless leader, said in the House of Commons that Bracknell post-Brexit would be the epicenter of global free trade. Now, obviously that's slightly tongue-in-cheek. However, it's the fact that it's getting recognition and the fact that it's being talked about says a lot, because there's so many businesses that are choosing Bracknell as their head office. So I'll come on exactly to where these are. What this commercial commitment has seen is £770 million being committed to Bracknell. So this is coming from Schroeder UK and from Legal in General. So two big funds have committed £770 million to a town of 120,000 people. That's a huge amount of investment. And the reason is because the fundamentals are building, that are thousands of jobs, commercial commitment. So what else do we need? We have jobs. Let's make it a place to live as well. We need amenities. So these photos you see on your screen are obviously real photos. This is called the Lexicon Centre. It's right in the centre of Bracknell, and it was completed at the end of 2018. Now, this is a spanning space. It has bars, restaurants, shops, cinema. It has everything. So it offers the amenity side, but it's all trying to reciprocate the surrounding areas. So it's the higher end of the market. It's your Marks and Spencers and Waitrose, it's Phoenix, it's L'Occitane, it's Armani. It's that kind of end of the market, as I say, to reciprocate the surrounding areas and the demographic that is moving to Bracknell because of the salaries and the jobs that it offers. So this £770 million, it's underway. This Lexicon, as I said, was the first part of this new regeneration. But this slide, I think, is so important because I always refer to the fact that I remember my father saying to me, oh, I wish I'd invested there 10 years ago, whether he was talking about London or wherever it might have been. And Bracknell is that place 10 years ago, because if you look at these 4 boxes, you see top left where we are now. Now those grey areas, that's the Lexicon, so that's the shopping centre. And sorry, one point to mention is that in 2019, the year just as it was completed, 6 million people walked through that shopping centre. So huge footfall, big exposure. So that's where we are now. But then this regeneration goes on till 2032. So we're 11 years away from the final product, from the infrastructure changing, from the aesthetic changing, from connectivity changing. So it's a really good time in terms of when we have committed to Bracknell, because inevitably what happens during these 11 years, demand goes up. What happens when demand goes up? Prices go up. So investing now is a really good time, not only for us, but obviously for our investors. Now, if you see on any of the boxes other than the top left, there's that blue box with an X. Now that is the development that we're going to talk about. So as you can see, it is right in the center of the town. And as the town expands, that gets even more exaggerated. So as a proven developer, SevenCapital have a good history and a proof of building and delivering on what we say we're going to deliver. So off the back of that, when we go for certain sites, we obviously have a bit of an advantage. Now, the site that we got offered in Bracknell was actually from the council, and it was the old bus depot. So it was the head bus station. Now, where are bus stations? A, next to the train station, and B, in the center of the town. So it's a prime location. And that's what I'll come on to now. Finally, and we'll send this information for those of you that want it. But one thing about Bracknell and this sort of surrounding area is that all of the consultants, we work with JLL as a consultant of ours, they're projecting severe growth in the next coming 5 years that are to come in Bracknell, because of everything that we've just talked about, the commercial commitment, the regeneration, the transport links changing. So that's the investment case. Now, to come on to the actual development itself, what you can see on your screen is obviously what we're going to be building. It's 2 blocks. One's 10 stories, one's 8 stories. A big thing to mention is that it's privately gated, which is quite hard in the UK to get planning permission for. So the whole site is privately gated, which offers obviously an added element of security. You have 2 concierge areas right in each block. So I'll come on to that. But what I'll say is that anywhere that you build, you obviously look at the demographic of that place. So who's living there, who's renting, who are the people that are going into the estate agents and saying, I need a place to rent. And obviously we've looked into that. We do all of our research into it. And one thing that we know about the tech worker is that inevitably this is quite ironic, because this was planned before COVID hit. But a lot of the time they work from home, but they need to be near their head office. Whereas nowadays you're accommodating the wider area, because I think we'd all agree that no matter what sort of normal we end up going back to, we're all going to be working from home a lot more. There's stuff I saw in the UK press this morning about people having the choice to be able to work from home whenever they want, obviously in industries that allow it. So we're going to be spending a lot more time at home. And what that's meant is that all of the recent, consultant research from Savills and JLL and all of their papers that they've released have all been addressing the fact that our demand as tenants are changing. So we want more amenities. We want more of a lifestyle within our apartment. It's not just a sort of small shoebox. We want space because we're spending more time there. And for me, who majority of the time are in the Middle East, and for those of you in the Far East, it's a bit more common practice that your development has a gym and a concierge and a swimming pool. Whereas, as we know, in the UK, that doesn't really exist, but that's the way the market is going because of the way that our lives are going. So this development is going to be SevenCapital's flagship. 55 developments that we've built. This will be our flagship development. And it's seen already some press in the UK because of what it's going to offer. So before I go on to what it offers,
I'm going to ask a question, Johnny. Go back to that previous slide. I bet everyone's thinking the same as me. How much is one of those on the end with the nice terrace? I bet everyone's thinking the same as me. Yeah, I know you will, but I wanted to know. I want one of them.
I'll come on to it. So this is where you see the orange crane, where it's the Grand Exchange. That's obviously where the site is. As I mentioned, you look to the left, that's Bracknell train station. It's 25 seconds down the road, and you're on a train to Reading, to Paddington, to across the country, essentially. So it's really well located in terms of transport. The bottom of your screen, this is all the lexicon that we mentioned. So you're 100 meters from that, so easy walk to your amenities. And then if you look to the right, obviously Honeywell, General Electric, Fujitsu, Regis, these big companies are just a walk down the road. These are big business parks, thousands of jobs just there. And then obviously you've got a lot more that are within a 5-minute drive of the Grand Exchange. So it's really well located, right in the center of the town and walking distance to all of these big head offices. So to come on to this sort of nitty gritty of the actual development, we've talked about what it entails, and to skip forward a slide, when I talk about amenities, I mean, this is really taking it to another level. And one of the press articles that was released was calling SevenCapital game changers in the property market in terms of what we're delivering, because this doesn't exist at this price point. We'll come on to the price point, but within the development, top left, you have a private dining room. So what that is rather than having people around to your house or clients over to your house, within your development, you have a private dining room only available for people that are residents of the Grand Exchange. And everything that is ordered is done through an app. So on the App Store, you have an app called the Grand Exchange. You can order catering, you can order cleaning, you can order dry cleaning. And so everything for the private dining room, for your catering, you can order through that app. Bottom left, the garden room. Now this is a lounge area within the development. So either you can meet your friends down there, or more likely you can meet your clients down there. You can do meetings sort of out of your own house, which obviously is a nice benefit. Middle, obviously the health club, which is just a gym. Below are spa rooms. So there's 2 spa rooms within the development. Again, this is all done via the app. So it's not an extra cost to you as an investor. It's an extra cost to the tenant. So it's pay as you go, as it were. So it doesn't inflate service charges, because it's all pay as you go for the tenants that are actually living in the development. So they can order all these treatments through their app. And that's the way that it's processed. Bottom right is the entrance lobby. So it's 5-star essentially. You have 2 entrance lobbies that are 24-hour security, 24-hour concierge at the bottom of your development. And then top right, which I think is what's gained us a lot of attention with the development, is the co-working hub. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will sympathize with me when we talk about the fact that you spend a lot of time working at your kitchen table, working at some obscure place around the house to avoid noise or children or whatever it might be. And so to have the benefit of within your own home or own development, getting in a lift, pressing a button, going down 2 floors and having a fully functional working space is crazy. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the UK, and we're game changers. We're the first people that are doing it. And as I say, we've had a bit of luck in the sense of we were planning on this before COVID, but obviously it's worked out in that sense, and that amenity, it's going to be even more relevant.
I think that's fantastic, Johnny. And I tell you what, and I saw Darren's nodding, agreeing when you said, actual fact, it's not on the service charge. It's going to be paid for the people that use it. And Darren, you're nodding again now. That is just so important when it comes to the mortgages. I thought I'd bring you in and give Johnny a rest.
Yes. have a drink of water, Johnny.
Cheers. Yeah.
Yes, the service charges. I've known from some developments where obviously all these things are added cost to the actual owner, and then the service charge is a massive thing. So lenders don't like anything more than 0.1% of the actual property value. If it goes over that, you just never get a mortgage on it. And all these things that Johnny's just talking about, I'm sat there thinking, oh my God, well, how much is this going to be? How much is that going to be? But actually, if it's all pay as you go, that's a massive change to a lot of developers. A lot of developers don't think about this. They think they pass it on to the person buying it, because the person that wants to rent the property out will want these things included. But talking to clients already, some of the clients don't want to go to the gym. They don't want to do this. So actually, it doesn't really benefit the buyer to actually do that, because that's not the type of. But actually, if this is pay as you go, this is going to be a massive game changer, to be fair. So.
And also, I mean, a point to mention is we've talked about, the 6,500 units that we've built in our history. 95% of those clients are mortgage buyers. And out of those 95%, 50% come from overseas and 50% come from the UK. So if our clients can't get mortgages, it doesn't work for us. And obviously we're the people that are building the properties. We know what how the mortgage market works. We know what we're required to provide in terms of warranties, in terms of ground rent, in terms of service charges, because otherwise it's not only the client that misses out, it's us, because that's where the bulk of our return comes from. So all of these things are considered when we obviously choose what we're building and how we do it. So
and just to carry on with Darren on. And this has come up this week actually. Somebody who's serious and looking, or one of the consultants or a client that's on a serious. Darren, you're approachable. Somebody can talk to you. You've got it as part of your service. That if somebody wants, and I imagine the people that are going to be living in here, Johnny, tell me if I'm wrong, are going to be executives that work for Waitrose or Fujitsu, whoever it may be. They're going to be executives, and therefore the mortgage is going to be based on their salary and the rentability. So Darren, if anybody's got any doubts and they want to get in touch with you, obviously your name is there and it's at Holborn Assets, and you're there to answer any questions regarding the mortgage side. How are mortgages at the moment, Darren? Is it all going through nice and quickly and valuations being done and everything's good?
No. I think Johnny mentioned it to begin with. It's pardon my French, but it's really, really hard work at the minute. So the sooner people think about maybe reserving one of these, literally, we need to start the process. I'm sort of saying to people now, we'll start the full application 6 months before completion. So something that Johnny just mentioned, actually going back onto what he just said, is 50% are overseas investors, 50% are UK investors. And again, that's really, really important, because what we're finding at the moment is people are leaving it really, really too late to actually sort finances out for mortgages, and then put lots of pressure on themselves, the developer, solicitors, us. As you can see, I'm grey, more grey than Chris, and I'm only 21. Ish. But the main thing that Johnny was just mentioning is that 50% of the UK, 50% are foreign investors. A lot of lenders are shying away from heavily investor-led developments at the minute. So actually, and because you can't control that, when a surveyor goes down to the property, they're never going to know how many are investors and how many are owner-occupier. But actually, what Johnny was saying, if 50% are owner-occupiers, or 50% are UK clients and 50% are overseas investors, that makes a massive difference. So the lenders will look at this development a lot more favourably than some of the other ones we've dealt with.
Get in early, Darren. That's the word. Get in early.
Yeah, definitely get in early. Get the agreement of principle done. As soon as you think you're actually going to reserve, or even after you've just literally done reservation, it might be a year. It might. When are these ones looking to complete, Johnny?
Yeah. So look, to sort of go back a step. The completion of this isn't until Q1 2023. So we're talking, 18 months. So as you said, Darren, I mean, 6 months before completion, obviously our UK office will call all of our clients and say, right, now's time to start getting in touch with your mortgage broker, and you'll have as much time as possible. What you said earlier about, making sure you have that time is so important, because we've noticed, over our history that, especially for overseas buyers, that it can take quite a lot longer to actually sort the process. So we give as much time as possible so that all sides aren't under too much pressure. So I guess with this, the likelihood is that it will actually complete at the end of next year, but we'll hand it over in January because it's a better market to hand developments over. So yeah, you'd be looking at, I suppose, middle of next year to start, or middle to end of, Q2 to Q3 of next year to start the mortgage process, I guess. Which, I mean, and obviously, Dan, I guess you'll come onto it just as I wrap up. But having just gone through the mortgage process, I think everyone in the industry is aware that the mortgage market at the moment isn't fantastic, and it's quite difficult, and things are taking a bit longer, and there's a sort of aversion to risk, I suppose, which is obvious. One of the benefits of buying something that isn't complete right now, and you're going to be starting your mortgage process slightly further down the line, is that you'll be within what is supposed to be a better mortgage market. I think within the industry, people believe that next year will be a better, more sort of fluid mortgage market than it is now, which obviously poses a bit of a benefit. But So yeah, so this completes then. Again, to hand over quickly to Darren, but just to finish off, the prices here, I mean, you see, and what we've just talked about in terms of the amenities and everything that this development has, you know, if you wanted that in the UK now, you're buying in central London and you're spending over £1 million. Whereas these, your one beds are 290,000, which means that your deposits are £58,000. And that's what we ask for. So on exchange, you pay 20%, and then you don't pay anything until completion. So there's no interim payments. There's no 10, 20, 20, 20, 20. It's 20% and then 80% on completion. So that's the way that the process works. So as an example, if you were going to get a 70% mortgage, you would pay 20% on exchange, which is in a month's time. So you'd pay £58,000 in a month's time, and then you would pay the other 10% in Q1 of 2023. So that's the way that you would figure it out. And again, just to finish off on that, and I'm not going to go through this because we'll be here forever, but we can send these over. We have these cash flows that are based on a specific apartment. So this is based on a one bed at 300,000. And on here, you can change the inputs of interest only. You can change to repayment, loan to value. You can change the amounts, interest rates, but it has every single cost, from legal fees to mortgage fees to furniture to letting and management, service charge, ground rent. Everything is plugged in here. And the projections aren't just plucked out of the air. As you'll see on the left, we use JLL's predictions, who are, if not the most recognized consultant in the world. And we're using their 3.5% per annum projection over the next 5 years. So this plugs in over a 5, 10 and 15 year period, what your returns are likely to be percentage wise and actual sort of from your capital employed. So as I say, if you want one of these to go through in more detail, to mention, you can change these inputs at your own discretion, and yeah, just ask and we can send them over. But I think that's it. I know
Johnny, you didn't answer my question. The one I want is that, you know, one of those ones with a nice big balcony on the top floor, and I'm thinking, looking at that, you're talking 400,000 for that one. I
think 380 they start from.
Oh, that's a bargain.
Well, yeah, take two, Chris.
No, that's good. Well, thank you, Johnny. It's lovely. It really is a lovely looking building. I love all the amenities. I love the private dining room. Obviously, I love the area. Any questions coming? Let me just have a look. Oh, interest rates, Darren, can you just give us a quick interest rate update?
It depends on where the client is, the nationality, but you're talking anywhere between 3.5% all the way up to 6.5%, depending on obviously circumstances. But what we'll always do is, like Johnny mentioned, is 6 months before the completion, we'll start the full application. But if you reserve now, what I always say to clients is, we'll review their situation now. So look at the criteria of the client now, look at the lender's criteria as it sits at the moment. Make sure that lender can, or that client can actually get funding in principle. And then what we'll then do is re-look at it again 6 months before completion to, one, check the client has circumstances haven't changed. Obviously, COVID, there's been massive changes, and employment and income and that type of stuff. But also, we'll also look at the lenders again, because like Johnny was mentioning, is next year potentially mortgage market should be a little bit, not easier, but a little bit, there should be a few more lenders coming back into the market. So just because we'll get an agreement in principle now doesn't mean we're going to use that lender 6 months before the completion deadline. So I would say 85% of my applications that go through at the moment, I was probably speaking to them back end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and those lenders I've got agreed then are completely different now. So we've like, there's a new
it gives people peace of mind though, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for the sake of a small fee, you know there's going to be funding, one for the client and one on the development, which is great. We've actually got a new lender just actually pop back into the market. So this is where the lenders have started coming back in again. And their strategy is, and the price points of these is fantastic, is as long as we've got a UK expat anywhere in the world, so it could be anywhere, which is a massive difference and a massive way of a change of some lenders. As long as we've got a British expat living anywhere in the world, and they've got another buy-to-let in the UK. So if you've got not a first-time landlord or first-time buyer, but if they've already owned a property in the UK, they will go up to 75%, and the rates are pretty good, around about 3.7, 3.8.
That's a game changer, Darren.
Massive.
That's a game changer.
Massive.
Just one question, sorry, Johnny, and this is coming from another part of the world. White goods, they're all included?
Yeah, so the apartments come ready to rent. So they have all the white goods, dishwasher, washing machine, fridge, freezer, fully fitted bathrooms, built-in wardrobes, carpet in the bedroom, wood in all the living areas, intercom system, floor-to-ceiling glass. So yeah, the furniture is an extra expense. We can accommodate that. There's different packages that we have that are cheaper than normal. But yeah, in terms of the actual how they come, all the white goods ready to rent immediately.
Thank you. Well, no more questions. So thank you very much from the home of
problem.
football. Thank you, Darren, as always.
Welcome.
Next week, same time, 1:30, the new time. And by that time, we'll be on our way to the semi-final, I think. So thank you, Johnny. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. See you next week.